Hello, everybody. Welcome to the HR Roundtable. I'm PJ Trudeau. It's great to see everybody today. We are so excited to have Jane and Jacey here today, talking with us from policy to presence, building an employee ambassador program that actually works. Certainly an area where so many of us really struggle, I think, to keep up with everything else that we're doing, working on engagement. How do you do that? What's the best way to do it? And as I was talking with them about prior to the session today, it is such a challenge for so many of us because there's so many different environments that we're in, whether it's remote, hybrid, in person, or a mix of all of those. So very excited to hear about the Employee Ambassador Program and just some ideas that they have that we can take away. So let me turn it over to the two of you.
Great. Thank you so much. And I know that you already asked this, Patricia, but if people want to just drop in their names and where they're calling in from, that's great. It's a way for us to get to know you all better. And my name is Jane Gotiangco, and I'm here with my colleague, Jacey Spratt. And we're going to share a presentation. And I know like sometimes it's like, oh no, it's a PowerPoint, but I promise you it helps us to stay on track and it will allow you to kind of see what we're doing. So I'm going to just quickly share and I'll go to share. One moment. And let me make sure. There we go. Okay, so making sure. So, like I said, I'm Jane Gotiangco, and I am a global communication strategist. I have over 30 plus years, little long, in brand storytelling, executive visibility, internal communications, digital strategy, helping professionals and organizations kind of clarify their message. Spend a long time with organizations and more lately getting into helping their people to clarify their message, amplify their impact.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Jacey Spratt. I'm a facilitator, a leadership trainer, as well as an International Coaching Federation certified career and leadership coach. I have over 25 years of experience, and I do everything from facilitate retreats to lots of leadership development training, as I recently did with David and the Aga Khan Foundation. And I also do a lot of coaching on the side, and super excited to be with you all here today. All right. Okay, so I want to just start out and show you some pretty disturbing statistics. And so when Gallup did a poll, they found out that really only 23% of employees are globally engaged at work, which translates to $8.8 trillion in lost productivity. And if I'm talking to people, they're, always, not happy to see these numbers, but I think as HR professionals, they probably especially stand out to you all because you live these numbers. You track them, right? And obviously, you're often asked to fix them. So they land right in your lap. So, I know you want to understand what these look like. So that's why we're going to focus on employee ambassador programs. We want to show you a solution that actually works. But before we dive into the details of what an ambassador program looks like, I'm going to have you all take a poll. So let's go to our next slide. And PJ is going to launch the poll for us. So I'm asking you all to answer what your organization's biggest engagement challenge is right now. So we put down some options that we see regularly. And if there's others, we'll invite you to share those once we see the results of the poll. PJ, can you go ahead and launch? Did you launch?
You did.
I can only see the slides, so I'm going in a little blind.
Sorry. There's answers coming, and I can walk through the answers for you,
Or I
JC.
can just escape. Is that okay? Can you still
Yeah.
see it?
Yeah. We see your PowerPoint though.
Okay, no problem. Okay, now I see them coming in.
So we're seeing a lot of cultural alignment issues, low participation in existing programs. Yeah.
All
Oh,
Okay, I
right,
can
I'll
see the
go
results
ahead
it's
and
now.
moving.
close it in just a few more
Yeah,
seconds
it's great.
and then share the results with everybody.
Yeah,
Great.
perfect.
Thank
Okay, I can see them
you.
now. Okay, so definitely cultural alignment after a change or disruption. I saw that come in at 58%. Then we had a tie, 33% at low participation in existing organizational programs, as well as connecting remote or hybrid teams, and then 8% at retention and turnover, as well as getting leadership buy-in. So I'm curious, are there other challenges that you all experience that aren't reflected in the poll? If you want to just go ahead and put those in chat.
Doesn't seem so.
Did we hit the nail on the head here?
I guess so.
If there's any others, just feel free to add them in. Okay. So as we expected, lots of engagement challenges. So you all, like I said, are living these daily. So Jane, if you want to keep going.
Yeah. Are you gonna share the screen? You want to go to slide
Yep.
presentation
There
view?
we go. Okay, there we are.
Okay, so we're here to talk about employee ambassador programs. And uh, before we get into the framework, I really wanted to focus on the definition because a lot of times the reason why these fail is more of a definitional confusion than anything else. So, an employee ambassador program is a structured initiative that gives willing and credible employees the tools, the messaging, kind of the confidence, training to authentically, and that's the key word, represent the organization. And this can be both internally and externally. Internally, I often hear it called champions. Externally, it's more brand ambassadors who are representing you, whether it's on stage at a conference or on LinkedIn. So, what it's not, I often have to go through this. It is not a social media policy. It is not mandatory posting of your staff. It is, think of it more like a marathon than a one-time campaign. And the most important one is it really is not top-down messaging in disguise as kind of employee authentic shares. It has to be real to them. And we'll get into that a little bit more about what that authenticity looks like and how it matches with your organization's values and efforts. What it really is more of a people development investment. Uh, because you're going to find people who feel that they're authentically being able to share, they're getting something out of it and they're invested, they're going to participate longer than 30, 60, 90 days. It is voluntary, and we consider it that visibility is really a byproduct of the engagement. So while that is going to be a great return on investment for your organizations, it is a byproduct because the real benefit is your people being more invested and, like we said, feeling more like they're helping to drive the culture at your organization. So the next one. The business case that we often talk about, why leaders, HR leaders, sometimes it's the communication people are making this, is that you really are going to find that one of the statistics that often surprises people, and it shouldn't, is that people want to engage with people more than they want to engage with an institution. So your employee content has 8 times more engagement on LinkedIn than your organization's own handle. So it's people really want to talk to people. That's important. Organizations with strong employer brands have like a 50%, they reduce their cost per hire by up to 50%. And employees who feel visible, developed, connected to the organizational purpose are going to stay longer. So you have retention and performance. They feel visible and purposeful. These are all taken from a few different surveys and researches, but these are not marketing metrics. What I want to say is that they are HR metrics. So it's not so much about a marketing outcome as it is about an HR and benefit to your organization metric. And these are the things that already your CFOs are talking about, your CHROs, you guys are talking about, your CEOs are talking about. It's tied to your business goals. Okay. For the next one, just a word about where this all fits into our larger structure is Amplify Presence is really three tracks and they feed into each other. So we have something called an executive presence track, and that's really about helping staff to understand kind of their emotional intelligence, their personal awareness, how they are reading a room, how they are showing up and being confident and having gravitas, especially as leaders or managers, that's often very important. The communication track is more around how helping them to be able to be good presenters, influencing across audiences, and that can be in a meeting or it can be on a stage. And really getting the message right, making sure that people are understanding what is it that they're trying to get across at a meeting, in a presentation, and are they saying it and hitting correctly? And then that feeds into like your executive presence track, understanding kind of who you are, what's authentic to you, feeds into the ambassador program. It helps you to make sure you understand kind of what it is that um, is meaningful to you. And then the communication track will build into what we're going to talk about is storytelling. So where today we're at this employee engagement track, it's really employee engagement with your brand, is how I look at it. But you're getting kind of a picture of what the whole three-part program can look like. Jacey?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about something Jane and I call the authenticity gap. And I feel like, again, I sat in an HR department for almost 10 years at two different organizations. And this really struck me because I feel like as HR, we sit in the nexus of what leadership communicates and wants for the organization
Mm.
versus what employees actually experience. So I loved these quotes. I'll give you a moment to read those, right? But, we have a strong inclusive culture. The employee might feel something very different. So how does that all translate to an employee ambassador program? So employee ambassador programs, they don't fail because, there's a number of different reasons. It isn't usually because of strategy, or what's on LinkedIn, or even because of leadership. They fail because there's what's called an authenticity gap. And that's that gulf between what leadership communicates the organization is versus what employees actually experience. So, employee ambassador programs that are built on the authentic but best picture of the organization are those that have the best chance of succeeding. We really just can't emphasize the importance of authenticity in building and maintaining an employee ambassador program. So that, with that, we want to give you a chance to do what we call an authenticity audit. So momentarily, let me just explain what we're going to ask you to do. Momentarily, PJ is going to put you into groups of four. We're going to give you 8 minutes and we're going to ask you to explore two questions. So the first one is, what do your employees genuinely believe about your organization? For example, what would they stand behind without being asked or prompted by leadership? And then the second question is, where are the gaps between your organization's stated values and the lived employee experience? And I just want to, make it clear that, when we come back from breakout, we're not going to ask you to share anything sensitive, anything proprietary. We just really want to focus on patterns and trends that come up. Is that clear what we're asking you to do? And it actually might be nice to do this with people from different organizations who, probably have similar experiences that you'll be very much able to relate to. All right. Do we have everybody back? Welcome back. I hope the conversations were enjoyable and informative. So I would just love, and again, no specifics needed. I'm just curious if any patterns or trends came out that you'd be willing to share. You're welcome to use chat, or if you're willing to share in plenary, we always love to hear voices. And I feel like if we can get one, then we can get five. Anybody learn something, or anybody feel heard that your organization isn't the only one experiencing a particular authenticity gap?
Okay, so somebody's
Do we
asking
see?
for how the question broadcast.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that.
I think in our group we focused on question
Yes.
one because we remembered it, and I think we all talked about how the mission of our organization is something that our staff can would stand behind.
Great.
Right.
Did anybody get to do question two? And our apologies, we didn't realize you didn't have the questions going in. Anybody find a gap between an organization's stated values versus what, employees experience? Or if you have one and are willing to share. And feel free either in, plenary, or feel free to put it in chat if you're more comfortable.
I apologize for the noise, but I can share one of the things we've been struggling with. We redid our values a couple of years ago, and one of them is to create a thriving environment where people feel well resourced. And it's really hard because we have not been able to, like, with our budget, like put
Mhm.
dollars behind that. And so it's just like it's a very like, what do we do as HR to create the systems and processes with not really having budget for professional development or things like that. So
Yeah. No, and that's a good one. And that's a nice distinction, that the will is there. The resources don't always provide for it, though. And like I said, you as HR get to be at the nexus of that, will versus reality.
JC, what was the answer to the first question? I didn't hear Cheryl.
Oh,
Um,
their organization is trying to put, Cheryl, do you want to say it one more time?
that our value is to create a thriving environment where people feel well resourced. That's one of our values, and just being able to put budget behind that is
mhm.
hard, particularly when people are anticipating professional
Thank you.
development.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cheryl. Any other? I'd love one or two more if you have them. And Jane, I don't know if you want to share, just, having the many years of experience doing this, I'd love to hear any big authenticity gaps that you've seen over the years.
I mean, I think part of what I found is that it isn't just authenticity gaps, it's how maybe people see see an opportunity or an initiative from a leadership perspective versus from an employee perspective. I think the biggest ones usually are around um, like we value like the values around work-life balance or eh, if there is a commitment to something like thrive, like a value like that. Just if you don't have the actual budget to match it, it can be detrimental more than anything. So I would say that gaps are often between the policy of a well-intentioned, like we want people to have an opportunity for developing themselves, professional development, but then they don't have any time to do that. So it's between the policy and the action that is taking place and where the value is there.
Fantastic. Anybody else? And if you think of anything, just feel free to put it in chat or want to share.
Mhm.
Okay. If you want to go to the next slide, Jane,
Right.
go ahead.
Okay, so with that brand ambassador program, we have three pillars that we work from. And the first one is on selection and onboarding. The second one is around messaging and storytelling. And the third is around activation and recognition. So we're going to dig in a little bit to each one to help you understand what it is and how we do that. So next one. Next slide. There we go. So the first thing I want to say is that not everyone has to be a brand ambassador at your organization. What does make a good ambassador is somebody who has, genuinely believes in the organizational mission. Somebody who's willing to develop, to learn, to grow, and to be visible. They have to be able to, post or speak. Credibility with peers. So it's not just about seniority. It's also about are they credible? Do they have uh, already have a bit of a reputation? So it's not just enthusiasm. Somebody can be really enthusiastic, but you also want them to have some credibility also. And then for this, it really is important that they have some comfort with LinkedIn. And if they're not used to LinkedIn, that's okay. This is more about an openness to learn. A lot of times what I found is people become resistant because they don't want to look dumb. They feel like, I don't know how to do this. I don't do this very much. I don't share very often this way. And it's so outside of their comfort zone that it makes them stop before they even can get started. So as long as they're open to learning, they're a great candidate. The second half of that, though, is but before I get into onboarding, the other thing that I want to say is selection can also really depend on your organization's goals. So if your organization's business goals are around increasing reputation around thought leadership or improving recruiting, like getting more people recruited, understanding better your organization, or strategic partnerships could be another one. That will play into how you pick people. And really, it's about you and HR now are that real business partner to the leadership about what it is that they're trying to achieve and how you can help them achieve those goals. With onboarding, you really want to include very clear understanding of what participation will look like, what support they would get from you, from and maybe you'd be partnering maybe with your communications team, what support they'll receive, making sure their managers are aware and are going to support them in this, what their organization commits in return, what kind of tools they'll get, and then the story framework that they'll work with. So that's something that we get into in the next one. And that's the point that Jacey and I help deliver when we do this with groups. So the next pillar is around messaging and storytelling. So we really firmly believe, and what we've seen has worked, is giving a framework and not talking points. I have learned from experience, unfortunately, that if you give too directive of talking points, it sounds like you have like 100, like, well, not 100, but it sounds like you have a bunch of robots going out talking, and it takes away all the authenticity from it. So let's say your staff and your authenticity, they felt like we do really value innovation. Saying that, everybody says that. We value innovation. But if they have a framework to say, like, I led a pilot last year that got funded in 48 hours, that's what innovation looks like here. And they can talk about that story. That is really authentic. That's meaningful. And that will get recognized and understood. Um, we're committed to our people. Again, everybody says that. What does that look like, though? What story can people say around that? Here's one. I was going through something hard and my team covered for me without being asked. That's really important. And I think that part of this is that then people see it, they hear it, even internally, and they're like, oh, I have a story like that too. And they can internally and externally engage and relate to you. Then the next one is around your activation platforms and recognition. So this is the third pillar. It's where the program really comes to life. And there are two dimensions to this that are external and internal for activation. So externally, LinkedIn is really the primary platform for your ambassadors. Unfortunately, most of the profiles of employees don't really reflect well their organizational role or expertise in any meaningful way. So that's a visibility gap for both your employee and the organization. So that's a place where we work and you help to make sure that that is matching up and that they have um, the tools to be able to make their LinkedIn profile be better representation for themselves and for the organization. And then the other thing is around thought leadership tied to your brand values. That's often where people are like, what do I talk about? And so we tie in, we look at what are those brand values and what are ways that thought leadership that they could talk about this. I call it social thought leadership because we're really just on LinkedIn. It's not like we're asking people to write a 20-page paper of thought leadership on your brand values. We're asking more for them to be socializing it and talking about it in a few paragraphs. Internal activation is really onboarding sessions. I have town halls here. It depends on how big you're going. Typically, I start with onboarding sessions where you're really giving them a chance to give them the tools and understand what it will look like. Sometimes we do 90-minute kind of workshops as a foundation. And sometimes we include people who aren't just on the brand story, the brand ambassadors. It might be managers or executives too, who you want to have the basic foundation. You want them understanding what the program is. You want them maybe even to have some tools to do it themselves, but they're not considered part of that cohort itself. And then this is also a place where they get some more client facing or opportunities to meet with executives. So it's a great place there. They might another thing that I often think about is it can if you have an internal initiative, like often the groups like your people who might be on a employee resource group or a DEI group, they're already in a place where you can naturally activate them to be talking externally also. And then the third one is really the recognition and sustainability. This element will really determine if it's going to be sustainable. If ambassadors are giving something, then the organization really has to give them something back. Development, visibility, formal acknowledgement. Without that exchange, participation typically drops off after 90 days. It just doesn't keep going. Okay. Um, so those are really, really important ones. They get a little cohort, they can support each other, and it typically then they also, after a while, become your next group of mentors. So the next slide. So to make this case, often what we talk about with somebody who's looking to say, like, how can I convince my leadership that this would be a good thing to do? We go back to really that it has to match your organization's goal. So you want to lead with return on investment. This is around retention rates, cost per hire, employer brand rankings. These are the numbers that your kind of leadership executives are going to already track. So start there and connect the investment to those outcomes that they already care about. I also say position this as an extension, not a new initiative. So I mentioned this a little bit before, but think about where you already have things. Your organization has a values framework. If you have a DEI strategy, if you have a leadership development program already in place, this ambassador program can just activate that. It acts as another layer on it, and it takes it to that next value of like really sharing this beyond just the walls of your virtual walls or not of your organization. And then the third is thinking about starting it really at a small scale, proposing a pilot with just a small group. It gives you a chance to really test it out, see what works for you or not, if it's right for you, find out what might not work and be able to make those shifts with it. 5 to 10 volunteer ambassadors is usually kind of low risk and will still generate some real data for you that will help you to have some internal proof points that could justify a broader investment. So the next one.
Okay, and I can just talk a little bit about what a 90-day pilot can look like. And again, this is a really low risk model just to test it out to see if it's, something that's palatable, that's going to work within your organization. So here's what it could look like. So in the first couple of weeks, and we always say employers know their employees best. you all would select your ambassadors internally. Jane and I are always happy to, provide input on what we've seen work in past experiences, but we trust that your organization knows who would make a great ambassador. So after those ambassadors are selected, we would run a kickoff workshop where we, work with you all to introduce the framework, the structure, and the ambassadors would meet each other. And again, as I mentioned, you all as HR lead the selection. We deliver this session. So in weeks 3 and 4, really focused on LinkedIn and storytelling. And ambassadors are working to, be more active on LinkedIn, refreshing their profiles, using the prompts that we give based on what the organization, wants to do for their ambassador program to draft their stories. And we would also run something internal to be able to make sure we know that managers' support is so important. So we'd want to have some sort of manager session in which ambassadors, managers are being introduced to, what their ambassadors are doing and how they as managers play such a key role in supporting them. Weeks 5 to 10 is really that activation period. Ambassadors continue to post, comment, and participate in a couple of internal events. And again, we would want your organization to say kind of what would be most useful and impactful. And we would really want to just track that accountability, help to keep the momentum going, so that there's buy-in within the organization and excitement. And then at week 12, we would want to debrief it. We'd come together, review, any kind of data you all were able to collect, both internally in terms of participation, as well as externally, primarily through LinkedIn, but whatever external data. And we really do work to think about, okay, what data do we want to track at the beginning, so that progress can be monitored throughout. And from there, we would, take all that and give you all a recommendation for scale. But really, it's a partnership process. And we've always found that the data, from a very kind of low risk model or low, sort of investment model from a pilot, almost always justifies the desire to have a bigger program ultimately. So that's,
Jacey,
yeah,
I wanted to just say one thing along this, if you don't
absolutely.
mind. I'm kind of going ad hoc but here, but
Go ahead.
one thing that I found when I did a pilot with an organization, they really wanted to enhance thought leadership, like be seen as like more knowledgeable in their sector areas. And the resistance I got from one pilot participant was she just wasn't used to doing this and she didn't want to look dumb. And I was like, okay, I'll work with you. We'll make sure that you're comfortable. We'll set you up so that you can write well and get stuff out there. So it was a bit of hand holding at the beginning, but I have to say that within 4 to 5 weeks, her peers within the organization saw that she was getting stuff out there and getting recognition. So also the CEO was like, wow, I really like that. I saw that. And they all were like, why can't I be in the pilot? And then they wanted to be in the pilot also. And it meant that they also felt like people valued their voice and their work, both internally and externally. So sometimes it's really important to recognize that while this isn't externally facing a little bit, there's such a big part of how people feel valued, and there's that like, what is my brand here at this organization? What do people think of me? And this can really help people to feel seen and heard also.
That recognition is key. And I always say engagement is contagious, right? It's
Yes.
a spark that then, we hope will erupt in a very positive way. All right. Any questions just about the concept, about how we implement, including the pilot? And just questions about employee ambassador programs overall. We have some time to take those, and we'd love to help in any way we can.
And we could take the PowerPoint down if people just want to have their screens open and be able to put themselves on screen and share.
I have
Yes.
a question.
Go ahead. Is it Griselda? I want to say it correctly.
Yes. Oh,
Hi.
you did a great job. It took me forever to raise my hand, so I'll figure that out after my question.
We're so glad you did, though.
Thank you. So maybe I missed this, but can you help me back where you were saying the ambassadors would like refresh their LinkedIn, profiles? Is this their own LinkedIn profile or are we talking about the company one?
No,
Because
it's
the only thing the only reason I say this is because my understanding is always like your email. So even though we may have like a our LinkedIn account, that not necessarily would have been linked to your company account. So it's like private but not private.
yeah,
And
yeah.
there's a social media maybe policy that you may
Hmm.
have. Don't put out anything negative to your about certain things, especially
Hmm.
with your company, but um just wanted to touch
Yeah.
that, clarify that for my
That is a great question,
understanding.
Ursilda. And yeah, most organizations do have social media policies, which are either like don't say negative things, don't put people at risk, that all of that. But at the same time, there is a real fuzzy line that has come up over the last 10 years between personal and professional. And LinkedIn is right at the heart of that, honestly, because it is a professional social media platform. So people are using it and they're using it to often, it's not just about like put your um, profile up there and hope to get a job. Right now, people are using it to engage and talk about what they're working on, what they do, what they care about. They're making connections, and those are both personal and professional. So that's why you want to make sure that in that you're picking people, one, that are aware that this would be an opportunity and a request for them to marry a little bit that work, but they kind of already are, but to marry it more closely. But you're not telling them what to share. You're really giving them tools to be able to share better and to be able to have more engagement. So the benefit for them is that they build up their own personal brand, which is really key. Okay. But in return, they're also going to be driving people maybe to more to your website more to learn more about like what's it like to work there, etc. So you just have to make sure that it's built into your brand ambassador program.
Exactly. And, in addition to all the LinkedIn work, they may also, in terms of external engagement, participate in a recruiting event, right?
Mhm.
Referring candidates, representing the organization at conferences. So while LinkedIn is certainly a big part of a brand ambassador program, it's not the only thing. So we just
Yeah.
want to make sure that's clear. And of course, then internal work as well. So, welcoming new employees, sharing more about the company and its culture,
Mhm.
and of course, engaging in other efforts, whether, it's a change management, DEI, whatever it is. So we just want to make the distinction. It's not just LinkedIn, though LinkedIn is obviously a big part.
Mhm.
Other questions? And I would just ask, has anybody tried to implement one in your organization? I know that was sort of our question when you logged in to sign up for this. I'm just curious if anybody's actually tried one.
I think another question I have that's related to that is, do you have employee resource groups already within your organizations? Uh, and or do you have kind of internal champions for different initiatives that you're doing? No, that's okay.
I
Is
would say, I can actually say from our organization, we unofficially do have internal champions because that it, I think, helps to make HR's job easier by
yeah,
having them.
yeah.
They're the ones that we know we can, that kind of, you have those go-to people that you know are
Mhm.
going to be able to represent whatever initiative it is that you're doing. And as we were talking about before the session, a lot of times whether it, whatever that topic may be, or I guess, idea or whatever it is that you're trying to move forward. A lot of times, if you don't have those champions, having a committee or having a group,
Mhm.
getting the employees more involved in it really helps to make a difference. As you guys have talked so much about this great idea of having these employee ambassadors, I think I think JC said it earlier. It's kind of contagious. It gets people to think
Mhm.
about it, and as they see it coming from someone other than HR.
Yeah.
So no, to answer your question, so yes, I can unofficially, we definitely do use
Mhm.
champions because it helps to help us move forward whatever those initiatives are.
That's great. That's great.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think filling that gulf, right, between,
Mhm.
leadership speak to, what employees experience as ambassadors, and in partnership with HR and comms really can bridge, any gap.
And one thing from like the very like branding, corporate branding kind of hat that I sometimes wear is that the brand is really isn't all the fancy logos that we have and the pretty website. It's the experience that people have with your employees. That's your brand. That's it. So this is a part of that where you're nurturing like what is that experience going to be like, whether it is through digital connections like LinkedIn or in person and being able to harness that is I think really critical.
Any
Okay.
other questions? All right, we get really excited about this, so we could talk all day. Okay, so I just wanted to end by saying, I hope that this was useful. I hope you got something out of it. And if there's an interest, it sparked, a desire to learn more, we are always open for a discovery call. We can do a 30-minute call with you all, just talking about our experience, listening to you all about organizational needs. If you think this is something your organization might want to do, helping you then come up with an idea for your focus, kind of whatever it is. We're always happy to do that discovery call. We can also put together, a proposal for a workshop, as I outlined. If you want to start small and do a pilot, we're happy to put together a proposal for that as well. And just if you want to learn more, Jane, were you able? Yes,
I
good. She
just
shared.
put it in.
Fantastic. She shared the file of our Amplify Presence initiative. She talked you through the 3 tracks: executive presence, communications, as well as, of course, the brand ambassador program, which we focused today as part of our engagement track. And we will also share our emails. I think they're in there, but I'll put mine in chat as well.
Mhm.
So we just want to thank you for attending today. We appreciate it so much. And again, feel free to reach out if there's a need.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you both so much for joining us today. Cannot tell you how much we appreciate it. As we've all talked about, engagement is so important to, I think, every organization, and there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. So thank you for sharing. I think a way that would really be beneficial to so many of us as the world has certainly changed and utilizing LinkedIn and the social media and a lot of other ways to look at, as you had said earlier, branding. It's not what it traditionally used to be, and there a lot that we can do as an organization and a lot that we can do to support our organization. So thank you both again so much for
Thank
joining us
you.
and
Thank you,
everybody
PJ,
else.
for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank
Oh,
you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
you
Bye,
too.
everybody.
Bye-bye.